you're gonna steal my chair for a treat. Do you want a treat? You're not gonna like it, but I'm gonna sit there anyway. Hello, welcome. If you're new here, my name is Carla. I'm pretty new here myself, so that feels weird to say. We are nearing the end of October. I think it is the 22nd today. It's Tuesday. And I have 3 books left on my TBR, plus the one that I didn't read last month that I feel like I have to, that I soft DNF'd, and I think I might just DNF it totally. Anyway, I have 3 books left in my October TBR. I have Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And then I have 2 Kindle books, Salt and Broom and Goldfinch. Goldfinch? Yeah. The 2 latter books are on my Kindle. So I was thinking, I actually have a lot of books on my Kindle. Here, I have them all written down. Every time I get one, I write it down. This is the list of Kindle books that I have. I probably gain about 2 free books a month, so I don't have many spaces left on this board. So I think we're going to see how many Kindle books I can read in a week. So every time a new month starts, you get a Prime, if you have Amazon Prime and a Kindle, you get a free book. That's like a first reads. So it's brand new. Usually it's a newer author, so most of those are from that. Those are also the ones that half of them I finish and I enjoy, and the other half I DNF because I actually don't love them. And if you don't know, this is my year of DNFing books that I'm not enjoying instead of powering through them. And I have been loving it. It's a little bit sad when I realize I probably DNF an average of a book a month, but that's okay because reading is for enjoyment. And otherwise I feel like I'm wasting hours of my time. So I'm curious how many, if I keep reading, I will DNF. So I for sure want to read Salt and Broom and Goldfinch. And I'm going to read them in that order because I'm so excited to read Goldfinch. I believe it's the last book in the Plated Prisoner series, but I thought that about the previous one that came out, and then she split it into 2. But I think that this is actually the last one. I'm excited to read that. So I'm going to read Salt and Broom first so that if it's dragging, but I like it, I will want to finish it so that I can read Goldfinch faster. I believe I will like Salt and Broom because if you didn't watch my October TBR jar book when I picked this one, I read Jane Eyre about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, and I loved it. I read it for the first time and I loved it. And this is a witchy retelling, so I thought October, great, moody, but it is very like dark and mysterious. So I think that this is going to be similar in that way. I believe the cover is just like a crow on a fence or something. So I'm going to start with Salt and Broom. I'm going to read now. I have about half an hour, which kind of sucks, but then we have to go out. We have plans tonight, so I'll probably read a little bit more in bed tonight too, because especially if it is similar to Jane Eyre, I will have to read for a little bit to get into it because the beginning is a little bit slow to start, but maybe it's nothing like it. Let's just see how long it says it will take me to read it. Oh, 2.5 hours. And this has over 4 stars on Goodreads, which is great for an Amazon Prime first read. They're usually closer to 3. I'm going to start that. I'll get at this point, 15 minutes in, and then we'll have to leave. If it's 2.5 hours, that's nothing. So it's a couple of days later, and I am like halfway through Salt and Broom. It's very good. I feel like I should do a recap now that I'm halfway. It is reading very quickly. I've just been a bit busy, so I haven't read as much as I would have liked. I would say it's more enjoyable because I've read Jane Eyre, so I know the stories. I don't actually know how I would feel about it if I hadn't read the original book. That is something to keep in mind probably. It's well paced. Things are moving along nicely. It is witchier than I expected. Like, she is a witch and they talk about it the whole time. So in the original, she's hired to be a governess. And in this book, she's hired to be a witch. And I think I like this Mr. Rochester better than the original one. He's still brooding and kind of rude, but he's just a little bit more human. She also made her 30 in this book, which is amazing. Instead of 18, I believe, in the original. She's like 17 or 18, right? I think they're like 20 years apart, and in this one they're only a few years apart, which I know that it's written in the 19th century, and that was more normalized, but this is also normal. People can be the same age as well. So I'm hoping to finish this tonight. I don't think it'll take me very long at all, probably a couple of hours. The writing is beautiful. It's kind of like she kept it like a period piece,
but it's much easier to read and I can understand everything that's going on. So in the beginning of the original Jane Eyre, I think you spend like a good portion of the first book going into her past and her life in the orphanage that she grew up in. And in this one, it's just kind of mentioned in passing about all of the things that I think make her who she is. I prefer the Jane in the original Jane Eyre, and yeah, the Mr. Rochester in this Jane Eyre. So that's interesting. But I think she's gotten everybody's characters pretty nailed down without being carbon copies. It makes me feel a little bit spooked out, which is good too. And it's just good enough that I'm reading it before work and when I have like 10 minutes to spare here and there, which I don't do for a book that I'm not enjoying. I'm just gonna read this for the rest of the day and give a recap once I'm done, hopefully tonight. It's like not even 4 o'clock, so I'm sure I'll finish it today. So since the last clip, I read a little bit more and then walked the dogs, made dinner, and then took a bath, and I finished the book while I took a bath. We have some battery operated candles, and it was like the nicest bath ever with those. So yeah, I finished Salt and Broom. I loved it. I actually really enjoyed it. The last 30%, which I think is like basically the whole time I was reading in the bathtub, I was completely hooked. I am going to rate it, I think, 4.5 stars. At its core, it is still a love story. I haven't looked at the genre, but I would call it romance. I think it was perfect to read in October because there is still a lot of like witchy parts and things going on, but it is a romance. I thought it was interesting though that once you remember, you get to the end and she like makes a lot of comments about how short of a time it's been, and you're like, oh, this takes place over a week. So like technically insta love, but also a slow burn at the same time, which when I deep it, I'm like, oh, not my favorite, but as you're reading it, you don't feel that way. I guess because it takes place in the 19th century, you're like, well, of course people fell in love quickly. Everybody did back then, is what we tell ourselves as romantics, I guess. But yeah, like I said, it's the perfect Halloween read. I actually didn't expect it to be that good for Halloween. Like the witch comments and the hauntings and all of this stuff is really interesting. And I think it perfectly kept the feel of the classic novel of Jane Eyre while still being a completely new book. I think it could stand alone well on its own, but it is nice that it like paid tribute to the older classic and that it had those characters. After completing it, I definitely still think that Mr. Rochester in this book is better than the original one in Jane Eyre. There was a good review I read that would ruin Jane Eyre for you if you haven't read it, but he's the better version. This one's the better version. He still is brooding while not doing the questionable things that you find out in the other one. I'll leave it at that. I will say, reading the original Jane Eyre a couple of years ago, I was not expecting the ending. It took me by complete surprise, and I was shocked that she could write that book in the time that it was written. It really was way ahead of its time, but I was like, I know what ending's coming the whole time. Nope, she changed it, and it's good. I think her creative differences that she chose to make were so good, and it made the book that much better. So you can read this as a standalone without knowing anything about Jane Eyre, and I think it would still be a good book. That totally bumped up my rating from what I thought it was going to be, because I was like, yeah, it just kind of benefits the story without completely making it a new story. But it is a new story. As I've said before also, like, the plot twists in this book totally fit. Once you read them, you're like, yeah, makes sense. The foreshadowing was there, but I never would have guessed it. And that I love as well. That just makes the book so much better, in my opinion. I also found this Jane to be much more relatable than the other one, probably because she's written in our, like, even though it takes place in history still, the author is from this century. So that's probably a big part of it. But mainly, like, in the original and in this book, her imposter syndrome is a huge thing. It's more alluded to in this book, but it's present in both of them. And I think that that's very relatable for anybody in the world. Everybody has had imposter syndrome at some point, probably. Right? It is perfect for Halloween. I would even say that some moments kind of felt like I was watching a flashback episode of, like, Vampire Diaries. Bonnie doing her witchy stuff. And honestly, it was pretty cool. Sometimes when you read, I haven't read too many books with like witches, granted, but some of the stuff is like fantastical and it's written in like a childlike way, the witch parts, but in this book it felt like it fit. Like she wrote as if she knew what she was talking about, even though it's fake. So I found most of the parts with like the witchy descriptions of things and her chants and all the things she does very fitting. Like it all fit in the world that is this Jane Eyre novel. That was Salt and Broom. I was pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this book. The romance is just, it's so beautiful in this book. I actually loved it. It was very romantic. The things that Mr. Rochester said, I was like, oh, he's a romantic, like, to his core. Beautiful. Anyway, I'm going to start Goldfinch in bed tonight, and we'll see how far I get. It is the next day. It is 5 p.m. I am worked out and showered and everything. Not quite dinner time, but I'm kind of hungry, so snack time. I started Goldfinch last night. I'm only about 4 chapters in, but boy, did I miss this series. I love these characters. I love Slade. I've said it a lot, and I'll keep saying it. He's one of the best fantasy male characters, in my opinion. We have some different perspectives now, which is kind of fun. I feel like every book she's brought in 1 or 2 new perspectives. It says it'll take me like over 8 hours to read, so I wasn't expecting it to take that long. I hope I can still get a 3rd Kindle book off my list this week. I would really just like to take a few off. We will see. I don't have much to say yet because I just started, but it's good to be back in the world. It's gonna take me a long time to get through this. 7% through, and I'm just starting chapter 7. So it's a long book. Let's keep going with Goldfinch while I eat my apple and peanut butter. I think Raven Kennedy, that's who wrote this, right, is quite good at adding descriptions so that I can actually visualize the scene really well. Like I know exactly which movements people are doing and where they're standing in a room, and I really appreciate that. It's good. I thought I would talk about Goldfinch while I quickly get ready for work. I have like 10-ish minutes till I have to go. I'm still reading Goldfinch. I'm about 65% of the way through, I think. I have like 2 hours left, it says, just over. So hopefully I'll finish that today. We'll see. I've had a busy evening, but TBD. It's like, oh, I should update at 40%, and then I kept reading, and then it's like, oh, I should update at 50%. And then I kept reading, and now I'm like, I should do an update, but I'm not actually 100% sure what to say. I don't think that is a case of lack of content as much as it's the 7th and final book in a series. So if you're not reading it already, you kind of don't know what's happening and what's gonna happen. I think the last 15%, since 50%, I have been a bit bored. Yeah, I think I have been a bit bored, and just it's been a bit lackluster, and I think by the end of this I'm gonna think it could have been 100 pages shorter. Just like any final book, like I said, like everything's coming to a head. You're wondering what's gonna happen. You're wondering which one of your favorite characters is gonna die in this final battle that they're gonna have. I was even like, I can't really talk about the characters. I think you know that Slade and Oren are there because the book wouldn't exist without them, but everybody else, has kind of been on the chopping block once or twice, so I don't even want to say who's still here and who's not. I think I was saying the other day that Raven Kennedy's descriptions are really good, and I always know what's going on, and I can always picture the scene, and now it's at a point where sometimes I'm like, okay, they've been in this area for the entirety of the book, like you don't have to describe it again. Like I didn't read it all yesterday because I didn't feel like it. Anyway, I'm just gonna keep going. It is good. I think I'm sitting at a 4-star. It's just other books in the series have been higher than that, and it depends how the end goes for what I'll think. Like I keep comparing it to the last book in Throne of Glass because at no point did I think this is too long, because everything was important and all of the characters mattered, and this is just not as good. It's just not as good. And I can compare it to that because it's like the Fae and the, oh, I will say the what do you call them, talents? I keep thinking of like Pokemon whenever whatever Fae does their thing, but they're very cool, the things that she comes up with. Like this guy can throw teeth that just start eating people, and obviously the rot's very cool, and somebody's spit turns into a wall, and all of these cool skills that people have. But I digress. I should go. Usually I start my car 5 minutes early, but I left my keys in the garage, so I can't do that. So I have to sit in it probably for a couple minutes because it's cold outside. I wore a jacket to work yesterday and I left it there, and I wore a jacket to work the day before that and I left it there just because it's raining when I go to work, and then when I leave it's sunny and like I don't need a coat. So I will be bringing a few jackets home with me today. I mean, this isn't great, but my office is warm enough that I'm usually just in a t-shirt anyway, and I think it's cute outfit. I bought these at Old Navy like 2 weeks ago, and I like them. So I recorded like a 20-minute clip of me chattering about Goldfinch, and the sound didn't work. So there's no sound on that 20-minute clip of me justifying my reasons for rating it a 3.5 and contemplating going lower. But I did take some notes that I used for that. So let me just regress back to that feeling. It's like a week later, so that's unfortunate. I have that problem where I finish a book, and if it's not the most memorable book ever, it kind of leaves my head. So I hope that reading the notes that I had taken helps. Right, I said that there are characters that we have the perspective of in the first quarter of the book that we never have the perspective of again. Their POVs disappear. We only have other people watching them. And I think it was just so she could add an extra mediocre smut scene to the beginning of the book. I'm all for a smut scene. Whatever. Put it in there. I'll enjoy it. If it's for characters that I actually care about. Right, I said that there were things that I think are supposed to be really emotional scenes, and I just didn't get that emotional about them. And I don't know if it's because I'm reading this a year after the 5th book. I realize this is number 6, not number 7. I think I said in this video a few times the 7th book. It's the 6th book. So I don't know if it's because I'm reading it way after those, or because I just don't care. I just don't care about the things that were supposed to be emotional. I'm not sure. I don't think I read it at the wrong time. I think maybe part of the problem is that I had such high anticipation of it, and it didn't really live up to the standards that I had set in my head. I loved the first half of the book. I think that's, oh, that light. I think it's clear in the video that I liked the first half of the book, and then it kind of went down, and it just kept going down. She like made some really big plot decisions. Ellie. She made some really big plot decisions and made things happen just for the plot instead of things happen naturally the way that they probably should have. So like the opposite of Salt and Broom. Like, you're not explaining it. There was this huge thing that just happened, and it really shouldn't have. And then you didn't explain why it happened, and I didn't love that. It kind of actually ruined the ending for me. And then I thought, I still love her writing, and I still highlighted a lot of things in the book. Like I do think she has beautiful writing, and I will read more of the books that she wrote, but it might have deterred me from, I was thinking before I started reading it, I should reread this series maybe in a couple of years, and this last book might have deterred me from reading it, because if this is the ending, it's mediocre. And it seems like maybe she left room for a spin-off series, and I would be okay with that. I would read it. So that's interesting in itself. And I'm gonna leave it at that. So this was 5 minutes instead of 20. And then I also was like, man, I'm so sorry for only reading 2 books in this video again. Like I usually do better than that, but this is the longest book I had on my Kindle. It was like 700 pages. And because after 50%, I didn't like it as much, it took me longer to read it. I took some time off, and I chose not to read and to do other things. When I love a book, I will binge read it. I could have read it in a day if it was something that I loved. So we're gonna leave it at that. Thanks for watching. I'm so sorry that it didn't work out in the end, but at least I had it in my library, so the background is still what it should be. But this front-facing camera situation, just to get it on my laptop, is it is what it is. Anyway, thanks for watching another video, and hope you come back. Bye.